Our guest author today is Keith Carreiro. He is an award-winning author and is passionate about writing science fiction, fantasy, and nonfiction. Throw in a little bit of Dean Koontz, Stephen King, and Lee Child with J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, and he is happy to say these writers are his heroes who inspire him to write stories that enchant, terrify, and hopefully entertain his readers. Welcome, Keith, to Zoom In Books.
Thank you, Kathy. Nice to be here. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. I wanted to take advantage of this interview and basically tell you a little bit about myself. I'm going to be 73 years young this August. 2 years ago, is it 2 years ago? COVID really messed me up. 2 years ago, I released a trilogy that I started writing it in 2014. And it's basically a sci-fi fantasy spiritual thriller. But before I start talking about that, I just wanted to say that I live in southeastern Massachusetts, and I have been teaching for a long time, over a half a century at the college level, but I've also taught long-term substitute teaching in music, and all subjects right up through high school. I taught high school, but I primarily teach college students. I started out at Harvard, where I went to the Graduate School of Education. I studied creativity and critical thinking. And in going there, I never thought I'd go there. It's quite a story in and of itself on how I got there, because I tried to talk myself out of going there. I said basically that I was too stupid and not enough money, but I had to eat my words, and I ended up going there in 1982 and 1981, and then in 82 I received my master's degree, and in teaching curriculum and learning environments. It was called TICLE, TCLE, but Harvard, being Harvard, they got rid of learning environments because nobody could define a learning environment. So now it's just teaching and curriculum. But at the time, I had some great professors, and they let me form my own studies based on core requirements for coursework. And I did my master's thesis in critical thinking and creativity. And then I taught in a high school up in Maine for a while. Then I had to get back to Harvard. They accepted me for the doctoral program, and I was there from 84 to 92. And did my doctoral work in creativity. It was an interdisciplinary look at creativity, and especially focused in on the performing arts. I started playing guitar when I was very young, classical guitar, and I studied with Joseph Raposo Sr. His son, Joe Raposo Jr. was very well known. He was the musical director for Sesame Street. Now, it may seem that I'm getting off topic, but I'm not, because these formative years very much affected the manner in which I write. I guess the zone in which I write, or the atmosphere, the culture, or the inner world that I feel happening. Because when I first start thinking about writing, it doesn't come out in words. Sometimes it doesn't even come out in images. It comes out in a cadence. It comes out in sound. It comes out in a sort of like a musical presentation, if you will, and then everything else follows. So I did a lot of composing. I studied with Senior Raposo with his son on occasion. His son was musical director for Sesame Street. He did music for Sinatra, for Vicky Carr, and that's the kind of competitive environment I grew up with in terms of music. And my musical experience was quite different than my public school experience. I really grafted well into the private music experience and studied with Mr. Raposo, Senior Raposo, till I was 17. And then at 18, I went and studied privately at New England Conservatory of Music, and then I was a concert soloist in classical guitar in the 70s. What happened in the 70s was in 1977, I developed something similar to Parkinson's disease. It affected my fine motor coordination. And I had to stop all my concert work, all my recording work, and that really threw me for a loop. I actually lost a marriage, I lost a home, and I was homeless for 2 years. And a family in South Portland, Maine took me in, and I started gradually getting back to some kind of a normal life. And I ended up with a former friend who, when I taught 6th grade in Rehoboth, Mass, for 10 years, his name's Richard Lawson. Richard was after me, you got to go to Harvard, you got to go Harvard. And that's where I gave the big famous double negatives. I'm too stupid. I'm not wealthy enough. It's never going to happen. Forget it, Richard, leave me alone. But he's very persnickety. He didn't leave me alone. And so long story short, I sent an application. I filled it out with Richard's help because I kept avoiding it. And then I sent it in late, thinking, okay, so now that stops that. But no, Harvard processed it and came back with a letter. And I was looking at the letter when it came to me, and I was looking at the envelope, and I held the envelope to a light, to see, okay, what is that? Because I hate rejection. Here I am, a writer, and I hate rejection. Get used to it, Keith. So I saw there were 3 paragraphs. It was very short. So I said, well, they rejected me. So I let it sit on my desk for a while. And then again, Richard called and said, will you open the darn letter? So, okay. So I opened the letter and it said, congratulations, you've been accepted at Harvard University's Graduate School of Education. I didn't read the other 2 paragraphs. So I threw a weekend party and nobody believed me. They just thought I wanted a party. So they said, go get the letter. So I said, okay. So I went upstairs, got the letter, and I read the other 2 paragraphs. And the second paragraph said, congratulations, we're granting you tuition-free education, and you have work study. So that took I'm too poor away from me, but I still clung that I'm too stupid to go to Harvard. You need to realize that my grandfather, I'm 2nd generation American. My grandfather came over here and he was always bragged that his grandson would go to Harvard. So that was in the back of my head too. So we had a weekend party. I saw that. So I just had I extended the party another 2 days anyway. So why is that important? Because very seldom until that point, did I understand the idea of celebration. For me, celebration didn't exist, and it's something I had to learn because I felt defeated. So that was a wonderful introduction to a very serious part of my life. And because I thought that my music was my art, and I had to learn that my life was my art. And that was a big breakthrough for me. And so when I went to Harvard, I said, okay, so I got to do something with all those years of music, all those years of being with phenomenal musicians. I mean, I played for dancers, for choreographers, for movie people, for playwrights, other musicians. And I had to do something with that. So I figured, okay, so that's what I'll do at Harvard. I'll study creativity through the performing arts. And so I took advantage of that, and I looked at creativity through the visual, literary, and scientific arts, especially performing arts. And I used that to inform teaching. So I borrowed a phrase from John Passmore called critical creative teaching, critical creativity. And I used it to describe teaching, and now I call it revelatory teaching. So I figured that once I got out of Harvard, I followed up on that material. I taught in Florida, I taught in Arizona, I taught in Pennsylvania. You may wonder why all the moving around, because I have wanderlust. I can't sit still. I want to know what's on the other side of the hill or the mountain. And I wanted also to get back to New England because my parents were getting older and I just wanted to be with them. I wanted to be closer. And then through that time, I was writing a lot of poetry, but I really wanted to write a novel. And I would start a novel and I would write maybe 20, 40, 60, even 80 pages, and then it would just die. It would just stop. And so that remained a big frustration until 2014, when I started feeling old man time creeping up on me. So I had about 1,000 poems written since, because I started it when I was a sophomore in high school. And I said, I got to put all of this in retrospect and leave a legacy for at least for my children. So I developed like an annotated Alice in Wonderland type of thing. So I annotated all the poems, I updated them, I put them on computer. And once I finished that, that was from January to March 2014, I felt, well, gee, aren't I the cat's meow? I should be able to, maybe I can write a long poem. And so I did. I read about the Nazis' final solution, and I read about hunting Eichmann, about Adolf Eichmann. So I decided I would devote a poem, long poem, as an homage to my parents' generation in fighting the war. So it's called Send Down the Master. And that annotated is about 75 pages. And when I finished it, I said, wow, now I've just done two things. I just did two things that I thought I'd never be able to do. I said, maybe I can start writing. So I said, okay. So I started thinking about writing, and then I said, boy, this is daunting. I've got to find a way, a strategy to keep me going. And I just happened to have attended the University of Maine in Orono from 66 to 71. There was a period of about a half a year out because Vietnam hit and I dropped out of school. That's another story. But when I was at the University of Maine in Orono, one of my classmates was Stephen King. And we happened to get very, very close. We partied together. We did some idiot stuff together. Some of that stuff is in his books. But when I first got to know Steve, he was doing work study in a cafeteria in the quad where I stayed. He stayed in one hall, and I was in another hall. And I met him, I saw him, he was cleaning tables, cleaning the trays, doing odds and ends. And then I also saw him in card games playing hearts, which he describes in his book, Lost, I think it was Hearts in Atlantis, I think was published in '98. And then the next time I saw him, he was always in the campus newspaper office, always at a typewriter, typing. And one day I said to him, I said, Steve, what are you typing? Every time I come in here, you're typing. So he didn't say one word to me, but he had what we call arithmetic paper back then. So he grabbed the manuscript that he had in front of him, and he went like this. He stood up and he came to me. There was a partition separating me from him, and he handed me the manuscript. So I started reading the manuscript, and the manuscript was about a car, about young people, and the car was intelligent. And what blew me away was I felt like I was reading Edgar Allan Poe. I felt like I was reading an old man's work, but he was doing stuff that I'd never read before because he was tying in all the popular culture, all the humor, all the jadedness, because this is during Vietnam. It was very, very, it was, everything was upside down. And I just couldn't believe his sense of humor, his sense of diction, his sense of dialogue, his sense of setting, his sense of plot development. It was all there. It was all there. So I finished reading it. I was there for quite a while. I put it down, and then I did the paper thing, and I went like that. He came up and he didn't ask me what I thought about it, but here's what he said. He says, I type out every day 2,000 words a minute, 2,000 words a day. And he says, just think of that, Keith, 2,000 words a day. How many words is that in 10 days? I said, well, that's a lot of words. I said, this is what you maintain? He says, yeah. He said, just write steady, 2,000 words a day. You know, he says, I do this maybe except for four times out of a year. All right. So this was 1968. 68. Yeah. Jump up 50 years. Okay. I'm on the internet and I happened to go by, I was Googling stuff and I saw Steve's website. So I went on his website and there he is talking about writing every day, discipline. Don't wait for inspiration. Write every day, 2,000 words a minute. So I said to myself, well, you know what? I guess I'm a slow learner because now it's taken me 50 years to figure this out. Okay. So why don't I write every day? Duh. And, you know, and I said to myself, I can't write 2,000 words a minute. That 2,000 words, I want to say a minute, a day. That's just too daunting. I said, well, how about, so what's my target? All right. How about 1,000? No. How about 500? 500 words is not that many words. So on that 2014 in May, roughly May 26th until October 9th, I wrote every day except for 6 days where I plotted and then I went to a grandson's birthday. I typed out religiously this manuscript that turned out to be about 184,000 words. And that was the basis for me completing a story that started basically on the coattails of successfully editing all my poetry, writing a long poem in homage to World War II generations, the Great Generation. And then I wanted to, here's the genesis. I felt like, what would happen if I could magically take George Washington, John and Abigail Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, that generation, and bring them forward into 2014? And what would happen if I went to New York City with them, Beijing, Singapore, Paris, London, Washington, D.C.? What would they do? What would they feel? What would they see? What would they perceive? Because I think they would think that they were in a magical realm. So the hubris of that, you know, me thinking that way, thinking that, okay, so again, hey, I'm something else. I can bring these people forward and they're going to think I'm a wizard. Then I said, you know, the part of me that always monitors me says, okay, smart boy, what happens if somebody 500 years from now comes back to you and takes you and brings you ahead 500 years? What do you think you'll see, let alone what that generation saw? What do you think you're going to see in the 26th century? So that started me out thinking about, well, wow. So 500 years from now, what's going to occur? So I started thinking about it and I started thinking, well, science and technology will probably outstrip everything that we can even think of right now. So being a science fiction fantasy fan, as you introduced me, Kathy, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if I had Steve with me, Dean Koontz, Lee Child, J.R.R. Tolkien, and some of the masters of science fiction fantasy. And this is Christian themed. So, but I didn't, for example, Lew Wallace wrote Ben-Hur. And when I read Ben-Hur, I was a child and went to the movie. This was the big screen with Charlton Heston. That kind of, I wanted to write that kind of story. I didn't know if I could write that kind of story, but it did something to me very powerful. And I wanted to be able to say, okay, some big mosquito, some kind of literary mosquito has bitten me. And now I've got to scratch that itch and I got to do it. So I started formulating what would happen. And what happens is that there are 12 power bases left. There's no more United States, none of that, all of that's gone. The people that could afford it and were in demand basically went off planet, and they're in the solar system where the sun is, in the 12 power bases. So the part of the solar system we're in is called the Orion Spur. So these people are fighting with one another because they can live forever. But I don't know if you've noticed, but humanity is very greedy. It's got to have more and more power, at least some of the prime movers. It's got to have more power, enough power. They're not happy with it. They're going to have more and more and more. Talk about a mosquito or a tick until they burst. So they weren't happy with life extension. They wanted immortality. So they started seeking ways of becoming like gods or like God. And so I came up with, why not have something like the Immortality Wars? Why not have a space opera that rivals Star Wars and Star Trek, but be completely different and have a whole different take on it? So then the series became the Immortality Wars, and I decided at my age that I wanted to write an genealogy or 9 books. So a trilogy of trilogies. I said, well, heck, you know, I was smart enough to get into Harvard. I was poor enough to get into Harvard. I successfully got 2 graduate degrees from them. I can do this. And it's going to give me something to take into my dotage, perhaps, and keep me active. So I came up with the first trilogies called The Penitent. And the Penitent can mean a lot to a lot of people, but basically to me, the Penitent is not just one person, it's a whole culture. And so the characters and the reader, I know you're going to think, Keith, you're doing a spoiler. No, well, I guess I am, but here it is. It doesn't matter. The thing is this: the character and the reader, despite hints throughout the 3 books, think that they're in the Middle Ages, but they're not. They're in the 26th century, and they're in the middle of a scientific experiment in which the gurus of technology and the wizards of science and the masters of power are vying. These 12 power bases are vying with one another to try to get the cure for mortality. They want to become immortal, and so they start fighting one another. So the experiment is it's called it's a type of experiment that you think it's lifelike. Think of Hunger Games, a little bit like Hunger Games, but a whole setting. So you've got this. Here's the setting. I don't know if you can see it. Kathy, can you see that okay? Oh, looks like they're calling me. So this takes place in what almost looks like England. And
yeah, we can see that from.
you can see that?
We can see that fine. Yeah.
Oh, good. So what you're basically seeing is sort of like an England, Ireland, Scotland look, which this is indeed like it, but it's an experiment, but it's a whole global experiment that's going on. So the characters have this history. They think that they live in this this world. And the theory is that the scientists are putting these people in war-torn situations. They're putting them in demonic oppression, because there's a theory that those that can successfully navigate through them are using their DNA differently than you or I. And the hope is to be able to get a genetic algorithm that will lead to immortality. That's the genesis of this whole story. So it just started, and I started writing it, and I reached the point where I was at 60 pages and it went flat on me. And I said, wait a minute. I gotta think about this. I gotta think that I'm a camera. I gotta think that I'm that I work with cameras. So I've got to see the action from a camera perspective. So that means I need to visually do a storyboard, because again, I heard the music, I heard the pacing, I had the ending. The ending came to me for the 3rd book, I just had to get to it. And then I started storyboarding. And so as I started the storyboarding, I took 5 points, bullet points, and I put them underneath the manuscript. So as I'm typing, the bullet points are here. So I'm able to follow the story as it's developing. That's how that was written. That's how I could stay consistently with this story and had the discipline to create 184,000 words. So that's how that came about.
That's a lot of words, and your work ethic is admirable. The inspiration from Stephen King is one of the best stories I've ever heard about Stephen King.
Yeah, what's interesting is that during that time, I had classmates say, you know, Steve's doing a book, a nonfiction book called Hearts in Suspension, based on Hearts in Atlantis. Hearts in Atlantis is a metaphor for the 60s generation. You're never going to go back there. It can't be found. We don't even have the language anymore. But something's missing. What, you know, did we really mess up, or what's going on with that? So they decided, the editor, Jim Bishop, who was Steve's first English professor at the University of Maine at Orono. Steve, in his first essay, college essay, got a C+, by the way. And they both still are at one another's throats over that, in good, you know, good sense. So they said, why don't you write something about it? Because my experience was kind of unusual. So I wrote a manuscript for that, and they accepted it. So I have a chapter in Steve's book, Hearts in Suspension, which is published by the University of Maine Press. Nobody got any money from it, basically, because all the proceeds go to fund the University of Maine Press to do research in Maine and Canada, that part of eastern part of Canada. So I got a chance to see Steve again and actually thank him. This was in 2000. This was at the election. This is, yeah, when Trump got elected. 2000. This was the book launch for that was the day. It was a Monday. It was the day before the election, and there were 1,500 people out there, and we were up on stage with Steve and having a great time.
That's a wonderful experience. That's amazing. Writing the type of fiction, fantasy that you do, I know one of the biggest hurdles for most authors is research. So you have to make your future-based books believable. So how do you research what's not there?
Yeah, I had to create a whole new world, actually several worlds, because the whole story also is based on a Russian doll, which is a doll within a doll within a doll. So in this story, it's a reality within a reality within a reality. So the 3 trilogies are each one of those respective realities. Ask me that question again, because I just jumped ahead in my mind. Sorry.
It's okay. It's how do you research?
Oh, the research was remarkable. There. Yes, thank you, dear. The research, I had to think about, okay, so we're in the Middle Ages. So what it has to smack of reality of what the Middle Ages, what a culture by fire and horse, you know, how did they farm? What were their tools? What were their weapons? What did they wear? What was their heraldry like? What did the houses look like? Yeah, so I have scads and scads of files based on that. And then because there's elements of, I guess you call fantasy or magical realism in it, I also delved into mythology, similar to what Tolkien did with Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So I borrowed heavily from Christian themes and stories, Norse mythology, the legend, what they call the Matter of Britain, the Matter of France, which those are medieval periods, I looked at Sir Walter Scott's work. I looked at the other work, Chanson du Roland Song. A lot of poetry there. So yeah, and I had my own poetry that I used. So I had to make sure that I fully understood, like, what were the ropes like, what were the horses like, what did the knights use for horses, what were the squires, what were the steep myself in battle formations, war strategy. Yeah, took a long time. It was a lot of fun. Some people might think that was work. It wasn't work at all. It was a joy to do. And every day I'd get up and the day would just evaporate. I'd get up 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And I kept a log, started keeping a log of my progress. And I started out at 500 words, 600 words, 450 words. And then it started climbing up 1,500 words, 1,000 words. And a couple of days I hit 4,800 words. Yeah, but it was meticulously researched.
And that's what it takes. I've talked to prospective authors who unfortunately say, it's not hard to write a book.
Oh.
And they have no idea the research, the time, besides the fact you have to live your life in the meantime. When an author finishes a book, it's a piece of your soul. It really is. And to do a trilogy, and I know that you have future works I know that you're working on. They're here if they're not on paper yet. So I commend you for these books and the research.
Thank you. And
the imagination that your research has taken you into for these books. We've put together some photographs of you. I know you were very active before the pandemic. And unfortunately, the pandemic shut all of us out of in-person events. So a lot of us went virtual. So if we can get that to full screen, please, we'll start this. I know that, and the interesting thing about a lot of futuristic books is they look medieval because that research is brought into current day, moved into the future. So how about telling us about some of these events where, from these pictures that we're seeing?
The two pictures that are up there right now, Kathy, they're from the Rhode Island Comic-Con. And it happens once a year, although it didn't happen with COVID. That's the biggest event that I go to personally. I sell about between 50 and 75 books there. There's about 17,000 people a day. It's a 3-day event. And you get science fiction, fantasy, fanatics who go there, and you can see they dress up. This is Boromir and Frodo, and I said, man, I gotta have a picture with you. So that's them on the left, and that's my booth on the right. My space, we split a table, and just so you get an idea of what's going on, I have half a table. It's a, what is it? It's a 8-foot table, so I have 4 feet of it, and that's $200 for the whole time, which is fairly reasonable compared to some places, because some places charge a huge amount of money. And this is through the ARIA, Association of Rhode Island Authors, which I'm a member. Even though I'm in Massachusetts, they let refugees like me into their association, which is very kind of them. So having an association of writers is so important to me, because it's a lonely profession. And I had to learn that I needed to have people that I could collaborate with, that I could learn from, that I could also maybe be a mentor with, so I could get a sense of what was going on, so I could just talk with others. So this is the booth I had, or the space I had. You can see the retractable banner in back of me is in the photo is the same one I'm using here for this interview with you, Kathy. This was, this is 2019. You meet so many people. Who was it? Kiefer Sutherland. I happened to meet Kiefer Sutherland by accident. These famous actors and authors and go to these places, and they actually charge amazing amount of money for you to get their autograph. Do you have a picture? Some of these people charge $300 just for a picture, and then they want more in case they sign it. So I don't have that kind of money. So it just so happened I had my daughter, one of my daughters came, and I was saying goodbye to her, and I came back into the building, and there he is standing with another famous actor, and I was so starstruck. I went up to him. There were guards all around. They left me alone. They saw I was harmless, and I had my identity card on. And eventually he stopped talking, and he saw that I was tongue-tied, and he was very kind. He was he unglued my stuck tongue, and we had a lovely conversation for about 20 minutes. And where I said to him, I've admired your work and your dad's work, Donald Sutherland, for years. I really think it's amazing what you've accomplished. And he was very soft-spoken. He was very, very kind. And stupid me, I didn't give a card. I should have interviewed this guy. No. So that was a lesson for me, to not be so starstruck that, I forget, but it was a wonderful moment.
Wow.
I really love doing these things. It's beautiful to be with your peers. It's beautiful to be with people, and to see what other people are doing. I spent, I think, more time roaming around than I did at my booth, and now they all joke with me being, the wanderer now. So
That's so true.
Yeah.
People realize it's meeting your customers, your fans, and meeting other authors, and the networking that goes on at events like this. People love to get an autographed book. They love to meet the author, and events like this are the perfect place to go. Let's go on to the next slide. So
the one on the left is, again, the Association of Rhode Island Authors. This is in Boston on the left. And a gentleman came up and was interested. I have the clipboard down there is for an email list. It was stripped down. It's nothing major like you see on the right there. But it was a beautiful fall day in Boston, in a historic part of the city right near Fenway. That was a lovely day. And there was also, I also went to another booth. So I did a double hitter there, using that baseball analogy. There's Realm Makers is a Christian-based speculative fiction association that's international in its cast. And I did a signing over there. So that followed after this one. The one on the right is Tatnuk Books in a nearby part of Massachusetts. I was given a talk on my books, and to my right or to your left, you see an early map of the setting for the first trilogy. That's morphed into a more sophisticated version.
So Keith, you're available for speaking engagements?
Absolutely.
That's great.
I talk on a wide variety of subjects throughout writing, because I also teach writing at the university level, and wide variety of aspects of it in literature. And it's sometimes I'll even give workshops in it.
That's great. That's great. Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, there's an example right there. it's called Radiant Thinking, mind mapping. I don't know if people are familiar with it, but it's a phenomenal aspect to creating. So you could say that there's 3 steps to writing. One is pre-writing strategies like free writing, clustering and branching, formal outlining. Mind mapping is one of them. Then there's composing, and then there's editing and revising. Some people make it 4, but I conflated the 2, so into 3. So this is me giving a presentation at the Hollyhock Conference, which before COVID occurred in New Bedford. And there's about 50 people in front of me at this workshop, all different kinds of people. It's very humbling to be to be privileged to share this information with folks, writers, presenters, publishers, editors, people in the book industry. So I don't know, I think I learned more than they learned from me, but it's a lot of fun. The photo on the right is the trilogy release, first trilogy, The Penitent, that occurred at Stillwater Books in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. That was on my birthday, August 18th, 2019. The lady on my right or to the left, she did the maps. That's my cousin on the little. She did the graphics. She did the covers. That's Hollis Mahala, and yeah, that's in that was a wonderful. There's about 50 people in front of me there too.
So here's a couple more.
Yeah, this is the one on the left is where is that?
You know, that's a beautiful display that you have.
Oh boy, I want to tell you, when I first started, I had nothing. It was like really bare bones. And I happened to be at a conference, and there was a lady next to me who was very skilled at this, and I took notes, took pictures, and that gradually I just helped improve it even more and more. So this is where is this? Oh, this is at the ARIA Association of Rhode Island Authors, independent authors at their expo, which takes place in the early winter at the Roads on the Patuxent in Rhode Island. And the one on the right was, where was that? That was outdoors at a nearby park in Rhode Island as well. So I had a tent. The tent got ruined in a rainstorm, so I got to get another tent. But that's always nice to do. And these are more. These are different conferences. The one on the left you can see that's an earlier one. I don't have it as a grand display as I now have. I have on the right and on the left you see a moose. I have moose fetish. I love moose. And my daughter for Christmas always gives me moose stuff. And so I have to have a moose with me. And the one on the right is, that's up in New Hampshire at a book signing up there. And the soul that you see in front of you in the bottom, that's Gandalf. And Gandalf was my muse. He was a golden retriever. And when I wrote the book, he was always near me. As a matter of fact, he was right in back of me the whole time I wrote the trilogy. And there I was watching a documentary on Tolkien, and I took a break, and that's Gandalf's couch right there. You know, it's not my couch. So he decided he was going to take over. So I had to take a picture because, you know, he was the muse, I think, for a lot of my writing. He kept me company. So Gandalf, the wizard, you know, shepherded me through this whole process. Yeah.
So we can stop sharing now. Thank you so much. it's so important for authors to have the opportunity to get out and meet their fans, people who follow them. Your books, I imagine, have a very large target market. Who do you think is your target market for these books?
It's a great question, Kathy. The research we've done, it shows that they're basically 18 to 34 years of age. They love to read. They love to read speculative fiction. They like action. We've done a lot of ads on Facebook. And this is interesting, I thought. A lot of people from India love this, the story. So I have thanks to Beth Werner at Author Connections, she's my publicist. I gotta do a shout out to Beth, because without her, I wouldn't be where I am right now. She's helped me learn the ins and outs somewhat of at least Facebook. And I went from a no authors page on Facebook to an authors page that had no followers, and now it has 1.6 thousand people following. But a lot of them are from India. So that's basically, and I think it's actually split even between men and women.
I
Yeah.
also think you have a global audience with this subject, particularly with Tolkien influences there. Tell us what your most memorable author moment has been so far.
In terms of writing the book or book signing, or?
Yeah, when you're out meeting your
Oh, well, I'll go back to Stephen King, because I had the author's proof of this book in 2016, and I gave him a copy of it. And you know, I don't know if that's terrible chutzpah or what, but I gave him a copy and I signed it and I gave a dedication to him, and I said, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have done this. So it's all your fault. So I'm blaming you for everything. And he laughed. And actually, before that event occurred, where we were on stage, we were in back of the auditorium, and I went to the bathroom, and there he is in the bathroom washing his hands. So we started to, I mean, I hadn't seen Steve since I graduated from college in 1971. So we talked and talked, and he went in a side room and I did something else. And then it went by her. He said, Keith, come on in here. He said, are you nervous? I said, yeah, I'm scared. Well, I'm scared to death. Okay. That's not what I said, but I'm scared to death. And he said, so am I. And I said, what? He said, yeah. He says, I get nervous before these events. And you got it. Not many people know this unless they've seen Steve live. He's an incredible raconteur. He had that whole auditorium in gales of laughter and rapt attention. There's people all over the world that come to see him, that follow him. So giving him, I guess that's probably a very memorable moment. Giving a copy of this book was something that I'll never forget. And his graciousness in taking it was also unforgettable. I can also say another unforgettable moment was at an ARIA conference, was at their expo, when a young girl came up. I think she was about 15 years old, in high school, 15 or 16. And she was a writer, and she started talking about writing. She started to cry about, I asked her, well, what are you writing about? And she started to cry about it. And she basically said, well, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. And I really want to do this. So I told her how I'd been stuck for years. And I later found out that she employed a couple of the strategies, and she didn't have to wait till she was in her 60s to write a novel like I did. So I thought that was pretty good.
That's pretty good. That is pretty good.
Yeah.
Terrific. Well, now that things are opening up since the vaccine, hopefully we'll get to see you in person at events this year, we hope. I have posted the link to your website in the Facebook feed. We want to thank everyone for joining us on Facebook. Please tell people how they can get in touch with you for speaking or a workshop or book signings and conferences.
You can go to my author's website, which is immortalitywars.com, and reach me there, or you can email me at Keith Carreiro, or just actually immortality_wars at gmail.com, immortality_wars@gmail.com, and I answer pretty quickly. You can reach me that way, or through my website, or I have an author's Facebook page. You can also reach me there. That's easier, probably doing that.
And your books are available on your website, Amazon, and elsewhere?
Yes. Yep.
Fantastic. I also want to thank Beth Warner from Author Connections. I've worked with Beth for many years. She's very talented, and I'm so glad that you were able to come and be on Zoom into Books today, Keith.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for joining us on Facebook. This video, if you missed the first of it, will remain on the Zoom into Books Facebook page. And in the coming weeks, it'll be on the Zoom into Books YouTube channel, so you can look at it at your leisure. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll hope you'll come back again.